welcome to Concrete Conversations, the Indian real estate podcast. I'm Yash.
And I'm Akshay, and we're the hosts of the show.
As technology and the internet become more ubiquitous in our lives and society, the backbone and infrastructure that enables this will have to expand as well. The connected world of today, along with all of its comforts, on some level rely on data centers, the physical locations and servers that enable the storage, processing, and transfer of data between our devices and the internet. India's rapidly growing data consumption and new internet users has led to substantial growth in this sector as new data centers are built to cater to this demand.
To talk about this transformation, we have with us today Mr. Nikhil Rathi, the founder and CEO of Werks. Nikhil began his entrepreneurial journey in the technology sector with ventures for selling web hosting before moving on to setting up full-scale data centers. Nikhil was even involved with setting up one of India's first private internet exchanges and has recently partnered with one of the US's leading data center providers, Iron Mountain, in 2021, recently launching their first Greenfield Data Center in Navi Mumbai as they look to set up more hyperscale data centers across India.
Today, Nikhil takes us through the setup and functioning of the data centers, the drivers behind the growth of this sector, and more.
So get ready to hyperscale your knowledge about data centers in Indian real estate.
Hi Nikhil, welcome to Concrete Conversations. We're really happy to have you here today. I know it's been a hectic week for you, but I hope that it's a more relaxed Saturday morning.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to be here on a Saturday morning chatting with two of the young guns, Yash and Akshay.
That's great to hear.
We're happy to be chatting with you as well.
Nikhil, usually we start the episode off by giving our listeners a little bit of context by telling them about our guest's journey and how they got into real estate and how they pretty much got started with the role that they're in now. So if you could just let us know what your career journey has been like.
Yeah, so this is a long part of the conversation. Yeah, I am 43 and as of date. But I started this journey when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
Right out of it was a bedroom startup. Mm-hmm. I used to enjoy computer science, so computers all throughout because I've had a computer like a Commodore 64. For people like you would probably not know about it. It's a 64 kilobit system, right, which came in from the UK, and my dad brought it in, and it had a basic compiler. You could code on that. These computers were fun. Kept playing with it. Mm-hmm. By 6th grade, I was doing C++. By 9th grade, I was doing assembly language. For those in real estate, they would understand assembly language is one level above machine code where you're doing 0101 binaries, right?
Wow.
So there was always my first love, So,
right.
So that, and then I ran and this is all non-real estate. So technically, I should say I'm not really a real estate guy, but I am here by profession and not a choicy decision that I actually made. But this journey is interesting because going from computer science to, I ran a bulletin board. People used to dial in. There was no internet.
Right.
Used to use a modem. Speeds were abysmally slow.
Yeah.
It used to take almost an hour to get a 24 KB file transfer.
Wow. Wow. I think it's safe to say that a podcast like this would not have been possible recording remotely across locations.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We didn't have MP3s, right? We used to talk about wave files. So,
right.
That too, it came in much later. That was the codec, and waves also used to not play. So we've seen different days. So,
right.
So been through a lot of that tech stuff. And, post that, around 96, when I was 17 in college, so I had marks to go into science, but my dad being from engineering background, he told me, hey, why do you want to go around and do this? You do a chartered accountancy, company secretary, MBA, that'll be, you'll make a good recruit for some company and you'll really rise to the top with that, or a great entry point. So with that, I joined commerce at Kodar College, and from that, in the first year itself, I started the business as a hobby. So I did the first website for a Jamru trading company. I don't know whether they still exist, but I was the first customer. And $1,500 is what I got. 1,500 rupees that time, $30, right? By that standards.
Right.
Actually lesser, but yeah, by that standards, it was about $30 that it was. And that was the first seed capital that I didn't take any money from dad or anything. So, in fact, my mom, she told me, return this check. We don't want you to get into business. We don't want to get you spoiled. Right. My grandfather, well, he was semi-retired, but he said, he came home and he said, this is a kid. He'll travel by train and go here and there, get tired, and just let him do what he has to do. He'll get tired, so let him enjoy this. So my dad didn't disagree. He said, yeah, let him do it. So I was doing my classes along with the company. Then that was the first website designer. That's how I got into the tech arena. First year itself, we got a couple of hundred customers. I mean, a few lakhs I made.
Wow.
So that's how I got into this. Then we got into web hosting as well in the first year itself. We had about, in the first few years, web hosting, we had 5,000 resellers worldwide. So we were making a good amount of money. And we used to host the sites, and then I started selling that off on a 1.6 GB, 1.2 GB hard disk, okay? So we were selling 10 MB space, 10 megabytes of space, 10 MB, 5 MB, and 30 MB space.
So if I'm jumping in here, but it sounds like your first venture into real estate was actually selling real estate on the web.
Digital real estate. So that's what you'd say.
Server real estate.
You were ahead of Mark Zuckerberg in that sense.
No. They made a lot more money. I did this for fun as well, just like that. It's a lot of us are people say, oh, you took advantage of you guys are business people. Actually, we're circumstantial successes as long as we believe in that, right? We were in the I shouldn't say right place, right time. We're just there in a nice space, right? And then zindagi ka saath nibhate chale gaye, right? So that's how it is. And the opportunity presented us 5,000 resellers, about 85,000 websites. So this was way back 96s, 97s. And then the dot-com boom came. We made money on that. We didn't do any of our own dot-com.
I mean, better to host the dot-com bubble startups, right?
Oh, we did not just host them. We actually built them. I made money on them.
Oh, fantastic.
That's really
fantastic.
Cool.
Leaving aside the names, they spent a few lakhs, and I was happy to take the money. And from that, we roughly around around 2000s or 2001s as well, I realized that hosting in India will be critical. So that time connectivity was only controlled by one company called BSNL, Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited, Government of India. Right, no other company connected. So I've got a ISDN 128 kilobit connection hosted companies like Tata Finance on it. Okay, so I hosted their portal, their applications on it in a garage in India. Apart from having, of course, what we had in the US. So you didn't have something on a data center, right? At that point of time,
right?
A data center was like where you put mainframe and mini computers owned by IBM and all of those things.
Right.
I went abroad with my brother as well to Nichols, Dudley, Massachusetts, while we were running, the data center business. So it was travel back and forth, but also educating ourselves because degrees are important and knowledge is important. And
right.
Because it's like a part weapon you have, but you don't tell anybody about it.
Right.
So that's been the journey. And then we set up the first data center here about 12 years ago. 13. No, actually a little more than that. I think 14, 15. I bought Unique Industrial Estate. We had an office there. So data center is not truly real estate. It's actually a tech setup with underlying real estate underpinned over there. Because real estate is about 20-25% of the cost of what you invest, but you kind of get that back if you ever exit in 25 years on that. But it's more tech and more MEP mechanical along with technology. So coming back, set up a small facility, first 20-25 racks, and then expanded that to 40. Hosted that out of Prabhadevi. Expensive real estate, but had it. Tried my luck out at that. It made money.
Right.
So from there we expanded to Navi Mumbai. Gave my first nice build to IBM because I wanted a nice brand over there. Part of the journey was also I established the first commercial internet exchange in India, which we called Mumbai Convergence Hub. So this was an idea which I, out of the States when I was there was a concept known as carrier hotels. Carrier hotels are buildings where every damn carrier is in there. and they just cross connect into each other.
Right.
For the uninitiated, what that means actually is you run a cable. If I want to connect to Akshay, I run a cable to Akshay. If I want to connect to Yash, I run a cable to Yash. If Yash wants to run a connect to Akshay, he runs a cable over there. So it's not even an intercom.
Right.
So I established that in India. That's the first commercial internet exchange in India, apart from the national internet exchange. That grew. I sold that company to the world number one, which was DKIX.
Right.
By the way, that internet exchange is right now top 10. It's number 9 worldwide. It's also beaten the Singapore Internet Exchange. And internet exchange is very critical to a data center because you put that in your data center and you start getting all the OTT players and people coming in for low latency connectivity into the data center.
Right.
And then we went out to fundraise just prior to COVID, to see whether we can get an investor, private equity and others.
Right.
Deutsche Bank was our investment banker. They ran it as a process. We had a number of investors who were interested, close to about 15 who took interest in it. We ran it, got 4 into the final round. Then decided that we wanted a strategic investor like Iron Mountain and went ahead with them. So this is during COVID and they're an excellent partner to have 19 data centers worldwide and stuff like that. So they had we had the connectivity, we had the enterprise, we had the local connect, right?
Right.
But what we didn't have was hyperscalers, and the market was also hyperscalers, a large market, great capacity in the data center, and we don't measure it in square feet. We actually measure capacity in megawatts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right, and we sell in kilowatts, not in square foot.
Right.
So I needed the hyperscaler connect, and Iron Mountain had that connect. So Iron Mountain brings in that they were hosting all the major hyperscalers. There's also part of Project Jedi for one of there was Pentagon hosting, and they came with a lot of trust. 70-year-old company, people trust them with all the record storage. I mean, Akshay, you're in Boston, right?
That's right.
So you must have seen Iron Mountain vans and Iron Mountain. They're Bostonian as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're known for the record storage. They're in physical papers and they do a variety of other things as well on the side, like art storage and other things. They've got a facility in Boyers, which is 220 feet underground. They have their own lake, and it's like they even host a lot of federal stuff inside it, or rather not host, they store
Mm-hmm.
They have a small data center inside it as well. So their growth was exponential. Since they acquired IO in 2017, they put in 660 megawatts. That's quite impressive. That's what attracted me, and I said, India's at 446 megawatts now, probably at 660.
Right.
So them having alone the company that way and building that up over a 4 or 5 year period from 2017 onwards. So I said, this is a partner you want to have because there's enough hot money lying around. There's enough real estate lying around.
Right.
It's just you need the right partner.
Right.
So that's how we partnered with Iron Mountain, and the philosophies met. And we decided, let's go with these guys and start playing the hyperscale game.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Pretty comprehensive, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think you definitely you set it up for us really well because you've given us a lot of different touch points on the journey. So forgive me, Nikhil, if this is a noob of a question, but I just want to make sure for our listeners that they have the context set perfectly. So if it's okay with you, I want to sort of summarize what you just said and make sure I've understood it correctly. In terms of the timelines and the different events. So it was early when you were in sort of a junior college is when you first founded your startup while also studying at the same time, and then you sort of scaled up your knowledge while growing the company side by side. What I just wanted to clarify is, at what point would you say, because I know earlier on you talked about selling digital real estate and you talked about the dot-com boom where you were essentially hosting the dot-coms. What point would you say was like the first data center? Was it after you came back, you said you set up the first data center? Or what exactly defines what that data center is as opposed to what you were doing earlier with your startup?
Okay, so I'll tell you what. When it started, we were hosting on a physical machine located in a garage, and there's no concept known as a data center, right?
Right.
And the internet was in its infancy. So what do we talk? This guy used to work for Lotus Corporation, and most people have actually forgotten Lotus. There's Lotus 1, 2, 3. He used to work for them, and he ran this out of his garage, and he put up the first server, right, and it was known as Global Drum. Yeah, they used to give you web space to host, like 10 kbps.
Right. So that was kind of the business you were in prior to the 2000s.
Fun, yeah, fun. First year.
Okay.
And then what happened was you couldn't host in India. Yeah. They didn't have the connectivity. You're talking about what, a 14.4 kilobit connection, and they didn't even have ISDN. ISDN was considered space age.
Right. I'm getting a better sense of where how the timeline sort of flowed for you. So I thought this would be a good point as we're building towards this, talking about more of the technical side of things, for our listeners to set like the harsh context. And I thought, again, another noob question, forgive me, but if you could just in a sentence define what a data center is and what it actually does for the audience, because this audience does have a bunch of younger generation listeners who, like we said, aren't familiar with like the dial-up modem sound, so they might benefit from a little bit of context setting here.
So a data center is a location where it's a location. It can be any location, but it has to be suitably there. But it has 5 pillars, and one is the location itself, the building, the power, the cooling, because the machines generate heat. Right, if you touch your laptop after a period of time, it's hot as well, right? So you got to cool something down that computes. Right, electricity goes in, converts into compute, and then generates heat. So you got to cool that down. And the most important component then is the network. Okay. Now it supersedes all the other 4, because you can have land in Ladakh, Leh Ladakh, or in the mountains, and you can have it cheap. You can have cooling, which is free in those locations, and you can have the building also built out over there. But what is critical over there is the network, because data center is somewhere where you not just store data, it's about data evacuation and also putting data in. Right. And you cannot evacuate and put data inside if you do not have the network. So the defining component is the network. And then, of course, is the last pillar, which is the manpower which runs it. Skilled manpower which can handle the network, skilled manpower which can handle the cooling, and skilled manpower which can have to handle the power. On a noob side of things, this is what a physical data center is, and what goes inside the data center is even more expensive than the data center itself. Right. So if you build a data center for $1, right? Of course it doesn't cost $1, but yeah, if you build a data center for $1, you'd end up putting probably 100x more in the compute and the storage inside a data center. And when I say compute and storage, you're talking about the physical computers, and you're talking about the drives that go in, the SSD drives, right? Right. And then the network equipment that actually connects all of that. And then you'd actually pay a lot of money for the bandwidth to come in, huge amounts of pipes. And when we talk about pipes, it's not a physical pipe. Sometimes people will actually imagine, there's a big pipe. It's not water. It's fiber. It's always consistent. Right. But number of fibers, so that it cumulatively adds up into a lot of bandwidth. So that to send data in and out. Now, a data center can be a computer room, which is in your office, which is just 4-5 racks. That is also a small data center. But that is a captive. That could just serve the users in your office. A data center could be as large as what the hyperscalers buy. And when we say hyperscaler, it's a word because hyper is large and scalar is somebody who keeps scaling. Right. And it could be multitudes of megawatts of 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 megawatts of IT capacity, which is measured as to what power that actual data center eats. So it's an entire spectrum, and most people, as far as your listeners are concerned, they should consider data centers as, what we're talking about today is commercial data centers. So commercial data centers are buildings which are, retrofitted brownfields or greenfield, as we so call it. We build the building to spec, having, cooling systems, right, power systems to support not kilowatts, but megawatts and megawatts of play. Right. So this is how it actually works. Right. If you have any questions on this, I know I've been a little too tech on this because I have a tech and business background together.
No, that's perfect. I think now that we understood what exactly the physical data center entails in terms of server racks and cooling and everything. I wanted to ask you based on this. When you are looking to set up, like you said, you can either do greenfield where you build a data center from scratch. So when you're setting something like this up, are there any geographical constraints as well? Because something interesting that we found out while looking into this topic was undersea fiber optic cables. So, what sort of geographical constraints are you dealing with when you're looking to actually build a data center, for, a greenfield data center, for example?
Yeah, so let me put it this way. Think of data center as a city. Okay? Think of it like a city. Don't take the caps off. Don't think of it as undersea cables or whatever. What's a port? A port. Bombay is a port, right? It developed as a port.
Yeah.
What did Calcutta develop as a port? So why are these cities bigger? Because they started off as ports, and then you evacuate goods which are for the hinterlands, right? Internal, and you do that by a train, which is your network, right? Which carry it back to the people. Same thing applies to data centers. Think of the roads and the rails as the networks. The landing station or like the undersea cable is the ship. The the terrestrial cable is the train and the cars. And that's how you pick and pull data.
Right.
Now, coming back to the location, yes, it becomes important because you have data which comes in or goes out. And now it comes on and goes out for two reasons. One, it is to serve, to take it in, which is coming through the optic cable, or to exit globally because it's a global, the intent is global, to send it out through those ships again. But the landing stations, which is like Mumbai and all, become a critical component, right, to this place. So now when you add that to Delhi, Delhi is a population area, so they're the consumers. So you need to have that store, which is another data center, which serves those people. You get it? So you need two places.
Right.
One is so Mumbai and Chennai, right? And then also you have to look at the trade routes, right? So where do the cables actually land, or where do the ships land? So they land through one route coming from Europe into Mumbai, which is the hotspot. And then you have people here also. So you're 24, 27 million people, Mumbai, Pune combined, consuming that data. So Mumbai becomes the natural hotspot, right? So the location in terms of geographically in a city, it's a key. And then you have 47 million in Delhi and NCR and they're located nearby.
Right.
So you want to have a data center there to serve the local guys.
Right.
And in between, you need to have the fiber optic network, terrestrial network, right, connecting. So I hope, you guys kind of get a fix.
Right.
You'll have a smaller store in a small city like maybe Jabalpur, right? So that's where the edge data centers come to play. Smaller places, couple of megawatts, 1 megawatt. In the larger cities where you have 47 million, you'll probably look at like maybe 30 megawatts, 20, 40 megawatts of capacity. In places where you have optical, fiber landing stations and a population, you're looking at upwards each data center being 15, 20, 40, 50, 80, 100 megawatts. So that's what decides the size and the location.
Right.
And another problem, so the network is very important. You don't have a road going into, let's say, going into Ladakh that much, right? So you don't have great roads.
Right.
So that's why you can't develop a data center there, because you don't have fiber optic running. Then there's no consumers over there. So you can't establish it there despite it having cold weather, which saves you power.
Right.
So what's important is, I think that's what decides the location in terms of the city. And within the city also, there are hotspots which actually develop.
So a quick follow-up that's coming to mind here, of course, is since you talked about the scale depending on the size of the city, how important is decentralization to the whole process of setting up data centers and to the entire function of how data moves and is transmitted? Is it important to have more emphasis around bigger hubs, or is it important to have decentralization where you definitely need smaller, how did you say? I think you said edge data centers in smaller towns and cities.
Yeah, so think of it like a hub and spoke.
Right.
Okay. So until you do not develop the hub, or rather you don't develop, I'll draw another analogy over here. If you don't develop a major international airport like Mumbai or Delhi, you cannot have feeder airports which are located in Jabalpur, right? Because they don't have that much population.
Right.
So same thing applies. So you have the hub, which is Mumbai, right? You have the hub, which is Delhi. and these are catering to the local population. And then you can develop feeders, which is the edge locations in Jabalpur. You can't have large locations there because there's not much of consumption over there.
Got it.
Now, why is this? Data centers, why are they coming to India? We could just have data centers located in Iceland, right? Or we could have it in the North Pole probably. It's cold there, and you probably don't even need so much electricity because you're cooling, which is natural. The problem is data evacuation is dependent on the latency, so it needs to be closer to the consumers.
Right.
So being closer to the audience, it doesn't need to be just the local audience. It doesn't need to be just Netflix for the local audience. That's just one application. It could be drone delivery. It could be GPS.
Right.
Or you want to know my car is running out of fuel or running out of electricity. Where is the closest charging point? How do you know that instantly? If it comes 10 seconds late, you've already gone ahead of that location. Now you can't drive back.
Right.
Got it. So that's why low latency becomes the key.
Right.
Now that gives you a picture, right? What edge does and why the data centers play an important role as well.
That makes sense. And I think that really outlines the kind of, infrastructure in terms of the hub and spoke that you were talking about as well. One thing I wanted to follow up, Nikhil, based on what you said, we know that capacity is now measured in megawatts. We know that power consumption, cooling are important parts along with compute when it comes to data centers. So what I wanted to ask you is that does this work better with purpose-built structures given all the requirements that you have in terms of greenfield projects, or is there is it viable to repurpose maybe industrial structures or stuff like that as well to become data centers? Is that possible, or do you work with only greenfield structures?
We work with brownfield as well.
Okay.
So it depends on how you want to look at it as a time to market.
Right.
It's just that a greenfield is more efficient because it's purpose built. But it's not to say that a brownfield cannot be efficient. It can be.
Right.
Equally or sometimes even more efficient, right? The only thing is the brownfield has its limitations because the structure is already there.
Right.
So you work within those limitations.
So is it a question of scale as well, Nikhil? That like for hyperscale, for example, or something, you would need a purpose-built structure to make it work efficiently?
Possibly, but not always true. So I will say it's like it depends. It's again, like I said, circumstantial. You could take a industrial building. I mean, actually, if you ask me, a lot of hyperscalers in the West, because in North America, like you have a lot of space, so they look at flat builds. They don't even look at. It's like a large warehousing complex, and again, you must forgive them versus us because we're 1.3 billion people on a small piece of land called India.
Right.
Whereas North America, you have like 400 million on a full continent. Yeah.
Right.
But coming back to the thing, yes, a brownfield can be as effective. The hyperscalers have gone into brownfields. They have no problems in doing that. It's just because now there are slightly more options. People are a little choosy. I mean, I would prefer a greenfield. But that doesn't change anything because, again, it all comes down to time to market.
Right. And, just to carry on from there, to maybe if we take a step back, we've now understood what a data center is, what the requirements are when it comes to building it. Now, this is, definitely a very fast growing market in India. And I think you had mentioned, the kind of total capacity India has in terms of data centers as well. But I wanted to ask you, what are the prospects for the data center market in India? Why is it high growth, and what is like the potential ceiling that you see here? What is the requirement that we're going to see over the next few years?
So you're talking about the drivers, right? Which are driving
Right.
So if you again, I'll draw the parallel. You look at Europe. How many million people in let's say Germany? 50 million. Of course, you have North America, 400 or 500 million people odd, and they're being served by many, many more megawatts than we are.
Right.
And India, 1.3, 1.4 billion, we're not being served as much. I mean, look at the megawatt to the population. It's extremely low. So there's enough headroom to grow. We've got a younger population. We've got rising incomes. We've got a rising consumption pattern. I mean, a lot more people watch FIFA now than they used to about 20 years ago.
Right.
So you're looking at a population which is consuming a lot more of digital content and a lot more of digital applications, and it's surrounding you. So I also tend to tell people, as India, we actually leapfrog technology. So we go from GPRS, a little bit of edge, and then straight to 3G, and then we jump to 4G, and then we jump to 5G. It's very fast, whereas it took a lot of time in North America to go from TDMA, CDMA to GSM to 4G, and they still have their blind spots. But having said that, one driver is your population. The second driver is the economy itself, high growth economy. The third thing is data sovereignty so Germans store their data in Germany. Not allowed to store it outside of Germany, right? You're not allowed to, companies are not allowed to do that. It's the thing is Americans store their data. I don't see any single American company storing their data in Singapore. It's all stored in North America. That's it.
Right.
Not even in Canada for that instance, right?
Right.
So the governments are actually pushing to make sure that it also protects them against cyber attacks and other things and keeps them independent. Imagine giving your digital highway and storing everything abroad. Well, if someone wants to cyber attack you and shut your country down, all they got to do is switch off your machines, and then your signals and traffic lights, everything stops working.
Right.
Third is the amount of data, fourth rather, there's the amount of data that we're actually generating, like your traffic signals, your smart cities, right? Where are things moving, all the digital cameras.
Right.
So all that data also requires storage, the processing that you actually need.
Right.
So that itself is compute right there, and that itself is storage right there.
Right.
And last, I think, which I would say is that, the companies themselves are huge consumers, because they themselves are seeing a economic boom or even a consumer boom. So this is all going to generate so much stuff. It requires compute. And not that we're going to not have cyborgs and robots and whatnot. Maybe we will one day, right? Maybe we'll have Terminators as well, but Terminators need to be connected somewhere.
Right.
It's what will drive the data center boom, and that's what's driving the data center boom here.
Right. How significant do you feel the impact of having an infrastructure status is for the data centers?
So I think it's very important for the government or the local government to actually realize that, and they have actually. So the infrastructure status does matter because it's critical infrastructure. You can't shut down a data center, right? It's like, a company, you can have labor going on strike, but if you're essential services, you cannot. The same thing applies to data centers. When they give you infrastructure status, you get the protection, you get the priority. But a lot of people look at it as an infrastructure status gives you access to cheap capital. So that's just a driver. It's not really the thing. It's more about how you're treated and how you're protected.
Okay.
Infrastructure needs to be protected and provided certain benefits of growing fast, because it's the digital infrastructure which will allow a country to leapfrog and the population to grow faster. It's an accelerator, not just a digital accelerator.
Right. And just to clarify something, Nikhil, that you had mentioned earlier, I wanted to kind of get a sense of the different business models when it comes to data centers. You had mentioned earlier that when it comes to data centers, the structure itself is a small portion of the cost as compared to the servers and machines you're going to have there actually doing all the compute. So with that in mind, is there segmentation in this industry when it comes to data center building and data center running and operating? Are those two separate business models? How does that work?
Not really. You can outsource the running of the data center, but the more important is just the commercial setup, right? So a co-location data center requires you to sell it.
Okay.
So a lot of people actually forget about the most important component is, you build a building and there's no buyers. You don't know how to sell it. What's the PowerPoint? The same thing applies to data center.
Right.
In the data center, our land and building is a max of 20% of our cost. 20, 24, 25, max 25%. The rest goes into the MEP infrastructure.
Right.
And then there's an operating cost. You need specialists to run the network, specialists to run and operate the chilling systems. They're mission critical.
Right.
You have companies that can operate it, certain sections, like you can use JLL or CBRE to run, let's say, the cooling system. But they can operate, it's like a technician versus a broader picture of, running the thematics of it.
Okay, right.
The whole thing integrated.
Right.
So it's very specialized. You need very special people who understand this. Building is one part, operating is the second. And very few people know how to do it, because this is just boomed.
Right.
And with this boom that has actually happened, you don't have a lot of trained people on this.
Right. And coming towards the end of our questions that we have for you today, Nikhil, there's another angle that I thought we could touch upon. I wanted to ask about data centers from a sustainability perspective. So clearly, data centers are something that are going to be around and become an increasing presence, especially in a country like India. So how does the industry, or how do data center providers kind of work towards sustainability in some form when it comes to data center design and also operation?
So in terms of sustainability, see, it's a power guzzler, correct?
Right.
So what in terms of sustainability, there are two components to this. One, we consume water. So a lot of movement has happened to use evaporative cooling and to use chilled water closed loop or air cooled systems, which are environmentally friendly. So that's our water usage efficiency, WU that we actually say.
Right.
And then there's a power usage efficiency, which our clients also appreciate. You consume 1 kilowatt of power, and how much of that goes to compute. So getting that efficiency, it's also dependent on the environment that you're in. So improving that inside the data center, right? The actual consumption of power on the compute versus what you spend on the cooling and the ancillary attached systems is one part, which is power usage efficiency. The other part, right, is how do you then power it off externally from sources which are renewable and environmentally friendly. So sustainability is two parts: the inside and the outside. So the inside, one of the reasons why we chose Iron Mountain as well is because they're heavy into all of this. They're 100% renewable across all of their data centers.
Wow.
Which is, and they're the first company to sign off on COP26, first data center company to do that.
Wow, okay.
And to achieve those goals as well.
Right.
So that attracted us to them. They also pass on and encourage their customers, because they have a unique program called the Green Power Path globally, which allows customers to enjoy carbon credits and stuff from even small from their data center footprint inside the data center. So bringing those concepts into India, although India has its limitations because we can generate solar power, a little bit of wind power. These are all fluctuating. They dirty the grid. There are lots of challenges, and then the government doesn't allow you to produce and consume more than 50 to 60%, and some states maybe 75, but most locations 55% of renewable energy. But beating the odds over there, right? There's a deep focus on the internal efficiency and also a focus on the sustainability. Because by the way, we once we got into with Iron Mountain, and we have our Pune we have data centers in 3 locations: Mumbai, Pune, Delhi right now active. Got another 3 going live soon. In Hyderabad, Bangalore, and others. So, Pune, we did a nice test setup of a solar setup, and frankly, it's powering up a small section, but kind of improves our efficiency. But we've done the test, and we are implementing renewable energy, buy power from renewable sources through, power access or open access and all of that, power purchase agreements and stuff. So, sustainability is big for us. In terms of, and remember, there's not much on STP or recycling of waste in a building, because there's not much of waste. There's not many people inside in a data center. It's mainly being efficient on the power usage internally and externally, and also a brownfield is more sustainable than a greenfield.
Right.
Because it's already built, you're repurposing it.
Of course.
So in all terms, keeping all of that in mind, sustainability is a big push for us, and we hope to bring the Green Power Pass to India as well to help our commercial customers enjoy that. So as an operator, this kind of completes, because we're guzzlers, this kind of complete. Maybe we'll probably own some solar as well at some point of time. Right now it's just making sure we do our core business. But power being the biggest ingredient, right, on a running cost basis.
Right.
Sustainability is through using renewable energy.
Right.
I think with that, Nikhil, I think that wraps up all the touch points we wanted to cover with you. On behalf of Yash and I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Concrete Conversations and for giving us so much information. I know it's a lot of information that Yash and I, and of course our listeners, will have to compute and really decipher and learn about data centers. So thank you again.
No, I'm happy to share my insights here. And the good noob questions help.
We're glad to hear that.
I think we've been pretty comprehensive today in terms of explaining things from the ground up for our listeners as well. So we're happy that you came on and decided to give us all this knowledge today.
I'm glad. Yeah, it was good, interesting. It's good fun. Yeah. Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Concrete Conversations on Instagram to know more about upcoming episodes and for some behind-the-scenes content.
For more deep dives into the world of Indian real estate, stay tuned for more Concrete Conversations.